5:12 a.m. local time. Persian Gulf. The sea is nearly flat, calm enough to look frozen. Through the morning haze, a U.S. oil tanker worth around $200 million moves steadily forward, its enormous hull carving a slow path through the deep blue water. From a distance, it barely seems to move at all. Only the long white trail behind it gives away its speed. On the bridge, everything feels routine. The navigation lights are fading as the sun rises higher above the horizon. The watch officer checks the course. Engine readings are normal. Radar shows only scattered civilian traffic far off in the distance. Nothing looks unusual. Nothing feels dangerous. Then the first alert appears. A sharp electronic tone cuts across the bridge. The radar warning receiver flashes red for a moment. No one reacts at first. Then the signal comes again, louder this time. The navigation officer leans over the console. Contact, fast mover, bearing northwest. The radar operator narrows his eyes at the display. 2 contacts, very low altitude, closing fast. At first, the returns are so small, they almost disappear into the clutter from the sea surface. But with every second, they grow clearer. Speed is extremely high, altitude is barely above the water. Out on the bridge wing, the lookout lifts his binoculars and sweeps the horizon. At first, there is nothing but haze and bright sunlight. Then, all at once, 2 dark shapes break through the cloud line. Jets. Fast. Low. Coming straight at the tanker. Aircraft inbound. 2 aircraft inbound. Inside the bridge, the atmosphere changes immediately. No shouting, no panic, just focused, silent calculation. The captain steps forward. Range, 30 miles and closing. The aircraft hold perfect formation. For a few seconds, they are only silhouettes against the bright morning sky. Then sunlight flashes across metal wings. Iranian military aircraft, likely strike fighters, set up for a maritime mission. The jets drop even lower, now skimming just above the surface of the Gulf, their engines casting shimmering heat across the water. On the tanker's radar screen, the 2 contacts suddenly split. One banks slightly left, the other moves right. A classic attack approach. The radar warning receiver shrieks again. Lock warning. The captain understands instantly. The ship is being targeted. Missiles. Sound the alarm. The emergency siren erupts across the deck. Crew members look up in confusion. Some start running, others freeze. But by then, the attack has already begun. At 20 miles out, the Iranian jets release their weapons. 2 anti-ship missiles drop from the pylons beneath the aircraft. For a split second, they fall in silence. Then their engines ignite. White fire bursts from the rear. Both missiles surge forward at extreme speed. From the bridge, they appear as 2 narrow white streaks slicing through the sky. Someone shouts, "Missiles inbound!" Time seems to collapse. 10 seconds. 8. 6. The crew has almost no time to respond. The first missile crashes into the tanker's port side just above the waterline. The impact is devastating. A violent blast rips open the steel hull. A massive fireball erupts across the cargo deck, throwing flames high into the air. The shockwave tears through the ship. Bridge windows explode inward. Crew members are thrown across the room. Burning debris rains down onto the deck. Oil lines rupture instantly. Thick black smoke begins pouring into the sky, but it is not over. 3 seconds later, the second missile hits. This one strikes midship. The detonation tears through the internal compartments with crushing force. Another explosion erupts, even larger than the first. The tanker shudders so violently it can be seen from miles away. Now the vessel looks like a floating volcano. Flames race across the deck. Fuel catches fire. Alarms scream throughout the ship. Electrical systems flicker. Some fail completely. Navigation displays go dark. Communications dissolve into static. The captain grabs the railing as the ship begins to list slightly to port. Damage report. No answer comes back. Only shouting. Only fire. Outside, the Iranian aircraft are already turning away. Their mission is complete. The jets climb slightly as they accelerate back toward Iranian airspace. Behind them, the tanker burns fiercely, sending a towering column of smoke thousands of feet into the air. From the attacker's point of view, the strike is done. 2 missiles, 2 direct hits. But they missed one thing. High above the Persian Gulf, 50 miles away, another aircraft is watching. A U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. Its radar and sensors suddenly register a violent infrared flash. Missile launch signature. Seconds later, the crew detects the explosions. Cameras swing toward the source. On their screens appears a burning oil tanker wrapped in smoke and flame, while 2 aircraft speed away from the area. Inside the Poseidon, the tactical officer speaks calmly into his headset. Confirmed missile strike on commercial tanker. The message is transmitted immediately across the U.S. naval network. Warships throughout the region receive the alert within seconds. Coordinates, attack profile, aircraft heading. Because what just happened in the middle of the Persian Gulf was no accident. And the response is already in motion. 5:16 a.m. local time. The tanker is still burning. Just 4 minutes after the strike, flames already cover nearly a third of the deck. Thick black smoke rises straight into the morning sky, visible from more than 20 miles away. Inside the bridge, emergency lights flicker weakly. Navigation systems are only partly working. One radar screen is gone completely. Another struggles through static. Then one system finally activates, the emergency beacon. A loud tone echoes through the damaged control room. The radio operator grabs the distress microphone. Mayday, mayday, mayday. The call blasts across international maritime frequencies. This is a U.S.-flagged oil tanker. We are under missile attack. Repeat, missile strike. Vessel on fire, requesting immediate assistance. The message repeats again and again across the Gulf. Ships and aircraft listening on emergency channels hear the same desperate call. But the closest help is already overhead. Far above the burning tanker, the U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon banks hard and begins circling the scene. From 20,000 feet, the crew can see the full scale of the damage. The deck has been torn open in two separate impact points. Fire is spreading along the pipelines that carry crude oil across the ship's surface. Flames are moving toward the storage tanks. If those tanks ignite, the entire vessel could be lost. Inside the Poseidon, the tactical stations come alive. Operators switch to infrared. The displays fill with intense heat signatures. The fire is enormous. Temperatures across the cargo deck are rising fast. One sensor operator speaks quietly. Fire is spreading toward the central tanks. That is the worst-case scenario. Thousands of tons of crude oil sit below deck. If the heat reaches those compartments, the tanker could turn into a floating bomb. The Poseidon immediately sends a full damage assessment. Live video feeds stream directly to U.S. Naval Forces Central Command. Within seconds, American warships across the region receive the update. One ship answers first, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer operating in the northern Gulf. Distance to the tanker, 38 nautical miles. The moment the message arrives, the order is given. All ahead flank. The destroyer's engines surge to life. Speed rises quickly. 20 knots, 25, 30. On the bridge, the officer of the deck studies the incoming data from the Poseidon. Burning tanker, possible casualties, unknown number of attackers. But the priority is obvious: rescue. Meanwhile, above the tanker, the Poseidon keeps scanning the sky. Then another concern appears. The radar operator leans forward. Two fast-moving contacts, same direction as the original attack, leaving the area, altitude increasing, speed extremely high. The Poseidon locks onto them immediately. Cameras zoom in, the shapes sharpen. Two military jets, Iranian aircraft. They are already turning northeast, heading back toward their coastline. Inside the operations cabin, the mission commander watches the footage in silence. The attack aircraft are not damaged. They are not slowing down. They are simply departing. Strike complete. But the Poseidon stays with them, tracking every second. Heading, speed, altitude, all of it transmitted across the naval network in real time. Within minutes, another response starts taking shape. Far to the south, on board a U.S. aircraft carrier operating in the Arabian Sea, the flight deck shifts from routine activity to combat readiness in an instant. Two F/A-18 Super Hornets are ordered into the air. Their assignment is straightforward: intercept. Engines flare to life across the deck. One after another, the fighters launch from the carrier, climbing hard into the sky before banking toward the Gulf. But distance changes everything. By the time the Super Hornets reach operational altitude, the Iranian jets are already fading into the horizon. Back near the burning tanker, the situation keeps getting worse. On deck, crew members try to battle the flames with portable extinguishers and damaged foam cannons. The effort barely slows the fire. Oil continues to feed the blaze. Deep inside the engine room, temperatures climb into a dangerous range. Warning sensors begin flashing. The risk of additional explosions is growing. On the shattered bridge, the tanker's captain stands motionless, looking out over the burning deck. The ship is still afloat, but the fire keeps spreading. If it reaches the central storage tanks, there will be nothing left to save. High above, the Poseidon circles in silence, capturing everything, sending live images to American command centers, following the escaping aircraft, and watching a crippled tanker drift through the Persian Gulf. Help is on the way, but it is still miles out, and with every passing minute, the flames move closer to the fuel tanks. 5:28 a.m. local time. The destroyer is closing fast. Only half an hour earlier, the sea had been calm. Now, from the bridge of the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the horizon is stained black with smoke. Sailors can already see it clearly, a massive oil tanker burning in the distance. Flames rise high above the deck. Even from 15 miles away, the fire looks fierce. The destroyer's radar keeps track of the drifting ship, while inside the Combat Information Center, crews study the live feed coming down from the Poseidon overhead. The damage is worse than they expected. 2 confirmed missile impacts, large fires across the cargo deck, unknown casualties, possible exposure of the fuel tanks. Inside CIC, the tactical officer studies the infrared imagery with intense focus. The hottest sections are moving steadily toward the central storage tanks. If the fire reaches them, the entire vessel could be lost. That cannot be allowed to happen. Launch the birds. Minutes later, the aft hangar doors open. 2 MH-60 Seahawk helicopters roll onto the flight deck. Their rotors start spinning at once. Rescue swimmers sit ready beside the open doors. Medical kits are secured, harnesses are locked in place. The mission is clear. Pull survivors off the tanker, slow the fire, and keep the ship from turning into a total loss. The first Seahawk rises into the smoke-filled sky. The second lifts off seconds later. Both aircraft race toward the burning tanker. From above, the full extent of the damage is even more alarming. The port side of the tanker has been torn open near the waterline where the first missile hit. Blackened steel curls outward like ripped metal paper. Farther aft, the second impact point still burns with intense heat. Flames race along the pipeline stretched across the deck. Thick smoke surges upward in heavy, violent waves. The Seahawk pilots make one orbit above the ship. Thermal cameras sweep the deck. Dozens of heat signatures appear. Crew members are still on board. Some are still trying to fight the fire. Others are trapped near the stern. Then one group suddenly jumps into the water. 3 sailors hit the sea almost at the same moment. Another follows seconds later. The helicopter crew reacts immediately. Deploy the swimmer. The rescue swimmer drops from the Seahawk into the water below. Within seconds, he reaches the first survivor struggling in the waves. One by one, the sailors are secured to the hoist and lifted toward the helicopter. At the same time, the second Seahawk edges closer to the tanker itself. The crew lowers emergency firefighting equipment. Foam systems begin spraying across the forward section of the deck. White foam spreads over the flames, slowing them for a moment. But the fire is too large. It keeps pushing toward the cargo tanks. Back on the destroyer, additional firefighting pumps are activated. Long-range hoses begin launching foam toward the tanker from hundreds of yards away. Every second matters now. Inside the tanker's bridge, the captain manages one final update over the damaged radio. 2 missile impacts confirmed. Multiple crew injured. Fire approaching storage tanks. Then the signal breaks apart again. Electrical systems continue failing throughout the ship. But just as the rescue effort begins to gain momentum, another alert flashes inside the destroyer's Combat Information Center. The radar operator speaks quietly. New contacts detected. Every eye in the room turns toward the display. 2 fast-moving objects, low altitude, approaching from the northeast. For a brief moment, the room falls completely silent. Speed extremely high. Altitude under 500 feet. Flight profile consistent with combat aircraft. Inside CIC, the tactical officer recognizes the pattern instantly. It looks almost identical to the first attack run. The destroyer's combat systems respond at once. Aegis radar locks onto the incoming tracks. Missile defense systems begin calculating trajectories. Out on the flight deck, sailors look uneasily toward the sky, while the Seahawk helicopters continue rescue operations over the tanker. Inside the destroyer, the captain studies the radar picture without saying a word. If those aircraft are coming back for another strike, the tanker will not survive, and neither may the helicopters still hovering above it. The gap between the destroyer and the incoming aircraft is shrinking fast. 20 miles, 15, 10. Inside the Combat Information Center, every system is now fixed on the sky, because what happens next could determine whether this remains a rescue operation or becomes a direct naval confrontation. The first sign that the crisis was no longer isolated came not from radar, but from silence. For nearly 11 minutes after the missile strike, the waters around the damaged tanker had remained unnervingly still. No new aircraft appeared on radar. No additional launches were detected. The Iranian jets that carried out the strike had already vanished beyond the southern horizon, their heat trails fading into the haze above the Persian Gulf. But quiet water does not mean safety. At 7:23 a.m. local time, the U.S. tanker's emergency beacon activates automatically. The signal is short, compressed, and unmistakable. Distress, missile strike, vessel disabled, fire spreading midship. Within seconds, maritime satellites thousands of miles above Earth detect the signal. From there, it is relayed into the global maritime safety network, triggering alerts across multiple command centers. But the most important recipient is already listening. 200 nautical miles away, inside a U.S. Navy operations center monitoring commercial traffic near the Strait of Hormuz, the alert appears instantly across several tactical displays. A single red icon begins flashing. U.S. flagged tanker. Confirmed strike. The room goes quiet. No one needs to say what everyone already understands. This is not piracy. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate attack on an American commercial vessel, and the response process is already in motion. At 7:26, the first confirmation requests go out to nearby ships. Multiple merchant vessels in the area report what they witnessed just minutes earlier. 2 fast-moving fighter aircraft, low altitude, visible missile trails, then impact. The reports match. The targeting was deliberate, precise, controlled. Inside the operations center, analysts quickly rebuild the sequence using satellite tracking, commercial radar data, and maritime traffic records. The pattern is unmistakable. 2 aircraft approached from the Iranian coastline, flying low enough to stay beneath much of the civilian radar picture. They closed the distance in under 5 minutes. Launch, impact, exit. Total time over the target area, less than 3 minutes. It was a textbook strike, but the aftermath is only beginning. The crew had managed to shut down the main engines, avoiding a worst-case propulsion failure. But now the tanker was drifting with the current, its massive hull rolling slightly in open water. On the bridge, the captain faced a harsh decision: stay and fight the fire, or abandon the ship before the heat reached the cargo tanks. Neither option was truly safe. Even if the flames were contained, the hull had already been damaged. If another internal blast occurred beneath the deck, the vessel could break apart within minutes. At 7:31, the order was given: prepare lifeboats. Even that decision carried serious risk. Launching lifeboats from a burning tanker in open water demands precise timing. If the ship lists too far, or if an explosion happens during evacuation, the boats could be lost before they even reach the water. But waiting was worse. The crew moved quickly, but with discipline. Emergency rafts were lowered along the starboard side, while others continued spraying foam across the burning midship section. Above them, a column of smoke climbed nearly 3,000 feet into the sky. From orbit, it looked like a dark scar stretching across the ocean. And that scar was now being tracked by satellites, drones, and patrol aircraft across the entire region. At 7:34, a new signal reached the operations center. Not from the tanker, from the air. A long-range maritime patrol aircraft had detected something new on radar. 2 high-speed contacts heading north, back toward the Iranian coastline. The aircraft kept its distance but locked onto the targets immediately. Speed, altitude, flight path. Within seconds, the data confirmed what analysts already suspected. The aircraft responsible for the strike were heading home. But what they left behind was far more significant than a burning ship. They had triggered a chain reaction far beyond the tanker itself. Because once a U.S. vessel is hit in international waters, the situation changes. It is no longer just a maritime emergency. It becomes a strategic event. And somewhere beyond the horizon, American naval forces had already begun moving, quietly, quickly, and with a level of precision the attacking pilots likely did not anticipate. The strike itself was over, but the consequences were just beginning. By 7:41 local time, the burning tanker was no longer the only focus in the Persian Gulf. Multiple surveillance systems had locked onto the scene: commercial satellites, regional radar networks, U.S. patrol aircraft. Within minutes, the entire sequence had been reconstructed in detail: missile launches, aircraft routes, the exact moment of impact, everything analyzed in real time. But the most important developments were happening out of sight. At 7:45, a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon arrived overhead at high altitude. Instead of descending, it began a wide orbit above the tanker, its radar scanning hundreds of miles across surrounding waters. Its sensors picked up everything: lifeboats drifting nearby, vessels moving toward the scene, even aircraft operating closer to the Iranian coastline. Below, the situation aboard the tanker had reached a critical point. The fire was still active midship, but the crew had managed to slow its spread using foam systems. Flames that had once surged high into the air were now confined to a smaller section of the damaged deck. Still dangerous, still unstable, but no longer completely out of control. At 7:48, the first lifeboat touched the water. One by one, crew members evacuated from the starboard side, descending into the Gulf as thick smoke continued to rise above them. Around the vessel, the sea began to change. A thin layer of fuel spread slowly across the surface. Even so, the evacuation remained calm and controlled. No panic, no chaos. Just the steady, practiced actions of a trained crew following procedures built for the worst-case scenario. From above, the Poseidon recorded everything, not just the evacuation, but the larger situation unfolding around it. Because while the tanker burned, a broader response was already taking shape. At 7:52, 2 additional contacts appeared on the Poseidon's radar. Fast, high altitude, approaching from the south. Not Iranian aircraft. U.S. Navy F/A-18 Super Hornets, launched from a carrier strike group hundreds of miles away. Within minutes, the fighters established a combat air patrol above the damaged tanker, creating a protective layer across the surrounding airspace. Their mission was simple: prevent any second strike. The jets flew wide arcs across the Gulf, scanning for any aircraft that might attempt to return. Their radar coverage stretched far across the horizon, watching the same routes used during the initial attack. Nothing appeared. The sky remained empty, but everything had changed. The Gulf was no longer just a commercial shipping lane responding to an emergency. It had become an active operational zone under U.S. military protection. At 8:06, the final lifeboat cleared the tanker. All crew accounted for. The tanker itself was still on fire. The missile strike had ripped a deep wound through the ship's midsection, and despite everything the crew had done, the structural damage remained severe. Now the vessel drifted slowly with the Gulf current, trailing black smoke into the morning sky. But the disaster had stopped just short of the worst possible ending. The cargo tanks had not ignited, the ship had not come apart, and most importantly, every crew member had made it out alive. By 8:17, the first official incident reports were already moving across global shipping networks. The message was brief and precise: missile strike confirmed. U.S. flag tanker damaged, crew evacuated, situation stabilized. Within hours, the attack would dominate maritime intelligence briefings, military analysis rooms, and international news coverage. But out on the water, the scene felt far quieter. The fighters continued their patrol above the Gulf. The Poseidon remained in its orbit. Rescue vessels moved toward the lifeboats, and the burning tanker drifted slowly with the current, its column of smoke rising high into the morning sky like a signal visible for hundreds of miles. A warning. Because in waters like the Persian Gulf, every action carries consequences, far beyond the moment itself. A single missile strike can send shockwaves through shipping lanes, naval patrol patterns, and global energy markets within minutes. And sometimes the most important outcome is not the destruction that happens. It is the escalation that does not. That morning, a $200 million American oil tanker had been struck by missiles. The ship was damaged. The sea burned around it. But the line between crisis and catastrophe held, only just.